Hello, everyone. I am Deb Scher, Artistic Director of Avaloch Farm Music Institute, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to Made at Avaloch, our new series created to celebrate the variety and excellence of the work Avaloch has supported. Each event will highlight one or two projects and will include discussions with musicians about process, as well as recorded performances of completed work. So far, Avaloch has hosted over 1,000 musicians in hundreds of groups and including dozens of composers. We hope you enjoy the diversity and depth of the genre and approaches to the creative process which will be presented here. Before we begin, however, I would like to thank a few people. First, our administrative team, Mason Donovan and Jenna Hall. Second, our musical team, Hannah Collins, Mike Compitello, Catherine Dowling, who joined me in creating these events. And last but certainly not least, Fred Tauber, without whose generosity the vision and inspiration of Avaloch would never have come to be. So thank you for joining us for this ongoing celebration of creative work made at Avaloch.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Made at Avaloch. My name is Hannah Collins. I'll be hosting tonight, and we are joined this evening by the Aeolus Quartet. It's violinist Nicholas Tavani, Rachel Shapiro, violist Caitlyn Lynch, and cellist Alan Richardson. And we are also delighted to have two members of the inner circle of the Aeolus Quartet composers, Tim Mauthe and Alexandra Bryant. So welcome everyone this evening. I'm really glad to see your faces.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
The Aeolus Quartet are repeat offenders at Avaloch. They've come and worked with us a few times. And the quartet, congratulations to you, has been together for over a decade and had a lot of success in competitions and performances and residencies. So I'll just kick it to you right away, Nick, and ask you, over this past, I think it's 12 years, what was it that brought Aeolus Quartet together in the first place, and what's on your mind right now in terms of what the quartet's mission is at the moment?
We were brought together initially, I think, by just our love for the music and also our love for being serious about rehearsal. I remember actually Alan and I were freshman roommates at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and we started playing together our first semester freshman year, and we've never stopped since. But I remember through the wonderful years at CIM, we just discovered that we loved to really dig into the music together, and we're all equally committed, I think, to the idea of being in a string quartet and delving together in rehearsal into what makes this wide swath of music so wonderful and beautiful. And in terms of what we're focused on now, in case anyone didn't know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we have actually just come back from a wonderful trip, our first time playing together in 6 months since everything kind of started happening. And that was so wonderful. And so we're just focused on figuring out more ways that we can do that while also respecting all of the realities of today's world.
Well, thank you. And we're so glad to have you be part of this series as longtime members of our community. We're going to get to some music right away, and we'll keep chatting about what's going on with the quartet and, of course, with Tim and Lexi as well. But the first piece that we'll be listening to together is a movement from a Haydn quartet. I mean, Rachel, could you introduce us to what we're about to watch?
This is the first movement of Haydn Opus 77 number 1, which is a piece we first read through, I believe, in one of our beautiful studios at Avaloch, probably after like a really huge breakfast and lots of coffee, like in perfect right. Avaloch tradition. Yeah. And we recorded this as part of a West Coast tour that we did when we were playing in Oregon, actually Caitlin's hometown of Salem. And then we went down through California also. So I think this was like the first thing we did, this performance in a studio. And this movement is absolutely full of joy, and it's so welcoming, and it kind of shows Haydn at his like late quartet best. using all of his different techniques of humor and letting his personality kind of shine through. And meanwhile, also kind of shifting the paradigm and letting voices besides the first violin have melodic lines and leadership roles and kind of changing quartet music subtly. And yeah, it's just such a pleasure to perform, and we're really glad to share this recording with all of you now.
Well, great. Let's watch it, and we'll be back in a minute. Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful performance. I have to confess that's one of my favorite cello lines to play. So it brings me a lot of joy to experience that piece. So I know that one of Aeolus Quartet's missions is to bring these classics that you fell in love with, as students into dialogue with new pieces and new collaborative projects and compositions. So we're going to turn next to a piece by Alexandra Bryant that was written in collaboration. Lexi, could you introduce this piece or tell us a little bit about the process?
So when the quartet initially approached me about writing a new piece for them, they wanted a response to Bieber's Unaccompanied Passacaglia. And in listening to it, I mean, I knew the piece and I wanted to do something a little bit more, which is not unusual for me. So I just kind of started listening to more and more Bieber and came across the fact that the Passacaglia was the 16th and final of a set of the Rosary sonatas, and the other 15 all had accompaniment to them. And that to me just became an inspiration for, musical ideas. And I found that in them, he actually uses a lot of scordatura. And so I, took the idea of scordatura and made that an element within the quartet. And I took, just passages that he had done in terms of like rhythmic or melodic gestures, and I wove those into what became a 3-movement piece that kind of mirrored the idea of the Rosary sonatas in their structure. And that was kind of the genesis behind it.
That's beautiful. We can hear from your description that the sort of programming idea came from the quartet, but I'm curious, in this particular piece, were there any other elements of the composition that were inspired specifically by the 4 members of the group versus sort of writing for a string quartet in theory?
Yeah, knowing the individual members of the ensemble, just letting lines speak, writing lines for that individual and making them kind of echo how I know that they would perform the lines. So it became very specific to, the 4 members of the quartet and their personal, styles of playing and as an ensemble.
Caitlyn, I'll ask you, as you worked through this process, how were you involved? Did you see sketches or did you, try things out? Did you get a chance to workshop things together?
Absolutely. And that's one of the great beauties of Avaloch, and one of the ways in which it's been such a gift to us, because it allowed us, instead of asking Lexi to write for us and come to us for the first time with a final product, it allowed us to work with her a little bit each day, and for her to bring us one line of music and say, try this out, let's see where it goes, let's see how it feels, and then go home and workshop and then come back after lunch and say, try this now, and not only, Lexi is brilliant, of course, it goes without saying, but also the joy of having her write for us when we all know each other so well, and it was such an organic process. It was such a joy to have that back and forth, and I feel like the piece that we all walked away with as a result had so much depth and so much power, and it's one of our favorites to perform, and I think a lot of that is a testament to Lexi, your incredible work, and also to our process, to the fact that Avaloch gave us that home base to really delve deeply and without rush through the process. We're really grateful for that.
I know I can relate as a performer. Sometimes, the feeling that you can advocate for a piece comes from really understanding it thoroughly, and oftentimes when we have a question that we can't answer about a piece, it's like it becomes a hindrance. So I the performance that we're about to watch, you'll see this. But Alan, do you want to introduce the specific performance we're about to watch, or is there anything that our viewers should be listening for in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So this recording that we're sharing was from a performance that we did at Cornell last summer, I believe, in this beautiful old church. I remember it was one of those days that it was incredibly hot outside and an old air conditioned church, but it's a beautiful space. We spent like all day in there rehearsing and played this kind of mammoth program without an intermission in the dead of summer. And I know I'm painting a beautiful picture here, but actually it was a really special evening for us. I think there was something about that space and and the incredible music that we were getting to perform that it was a really memorable performance. And such a joy to perform Lexi's quartet. It's actually, as I think Caitlyn mentioned, it's become kind of a staple for us in the, I guess, year and a half since it was written. So,
well, let's watch it. Such a beautiful piece and a beautiful performance. And thanks again to all of you for sharing that. You know, Lexi, I want to ask you, Alan gave us such a vivid picture of this particular performance, complete with sweat and, you know, the beautiful acoustic that we could hear in the video. How do you find the experiences as a composer, once you've completed the piece, to watch it be performed in a space like that, and then perhaps like in a regular concert hall? Or have you noticed different aspects of the piece coming forward because of different circumstances?
I definitely think that, you know, being in a giant cathedral is kind of the perfect setting for a piece like that. And it's what I would want for every performance in terms of just the reverberation that you get in such a beautiful, beautiful space. And I think that it just speaks to hopefully kind of the, you know, the feeling behind the piece, the intent that there is, and the mood and the emotions that it's supposed to evoke, and, you know, that someone should hopefully be experiencing. And I think, you know, it's not that it's not powerful. Hopefully, I say that maybe not to be cocky, but, you know, in a generic concert hall. But I think, you know, there is something about the space that does transform just how any piece is actually received by the audience.
Have there been any other performances besides this one that were particularly memorable for one reason or another?
The first one that I actually got to experience live in Austin was a great moment. And I actually had, at that point, my, I think he was maybe 16-month-old son. And I just remember I was kind of like listening through the crack of the door and because he was just too talkative. And you know what, like a 16-month-old is very happy and you want them to experience life. I just remember kind of listening through the door and then coming back and actually getting to hear the recording. And it was a strange experience to introduce the piece and then go back to my son. Someone was watching him, don't worry. And then, you know, like at the very end, I was like holding him and just kind of like standing back and like waving and just like, that's my life, you know, thinking about like, I am a mother, but I'm also someone who wants to create. And it was a very cool balance between the realities of life, I guess. So.
Yes, and that's a beautiful image too of the partnership that the quartet can, you know, do their part while you're doing the mother part, and the collaboration together brings the beautiful music to the audience, which is what it should be about, right? All these collaborations. So thank you very much, Lexi, for sharing this piece. We're going to turn now to a different type of collaboration. Alan, I'll start with you, but the next piece we're going to hear is a movement of a quartet by Philip Glass. And could you tell us a little bit more about your version of this?
Absolutely. We performed this at the Freer Gallery in DC. We got an incredible kind of prompt for a program theme from the gallery. They wanted a concert inspired by 20th century Japanese print photography, and it was that was their exhibit at the time, and it was such a stretch for us to find, you know, so much of our repertoire is European. A lot of the contemporary work that we do is American. So it was a really, intriguing project, and one that we spent a lot of time kind of brainstorming, and what we eventually came up with was something that we were all really proud of. And it was for me, one of the highlights in our 12 years together. We commissioned two dear friends of ours, dancers from the Mark Morris dance group, to choreograph and dance this Philip Glass third string quartet, which the piece tells the story of a Japanese kind of author and also sort of revolutionary figure. And it was a really just incredible experience to have this piece in this setting kind of come to life in a new way with dance with just phenomenal choreography from a couple of our dear friends.
That's great. I believe we're about to watch the finale. Rachel, can I ask you, is there anything particular that you remember about the collaborative process or about this movement in particular that stands out?
I think during the process of putting this together, actually, for some reason, the orientation, like I hadn't seen what the dancers were doing until maybe we watched like some playback video or something, or we watched them rehearsing it. And I just remember being so astounded at what they were able to do and the places that their imaginations went, and like what they could bring to life through their art. In this music that we were hearing, you know, as musicians, as a string quartet, doing all the like interlocking things and all the chamber music-y things, and there's just like this whole other dimension. And I just really wanted to be in the audience for that performance. So we're lucky that we have videos, so I can watch that time.
You get to be in the audience right now. So
exactly amazing.
Well, let's watch it. Yeah.
It's one of the most special collaborations I think we did that whole season. So yeah, excited.
One more thing that's striking about it too is that I remember sitting in our studio at Avaloch and making the recording that the dancers then used to choreograph. And it all comes back for me to how Avaloch has enabled us to go forward with so many fruitful collaborations that might not have been possible had it not been for Avaloch. And I remember, do you guys remember that whole day we spent recording the Takamitsu and this glass that you're about to hear? And just having the space to do that was so incredible, and kind of like talking through ideas for this program. And I don't know, it's just having that kind of space has allowed us not only to dream and have the space to come up with these program ideas. Like Alan was saying, this was ended up being a very meaningful experience for us to be stretched in this way. And then to have this space to not only daydream about it and come up with these ideas, but then be able to actually push these collaborations forward, both with our composers and with Leslie and Billy, the dancers in this case.
Okay, after watching these incredible dancers, we should probably learn a little bit more about them. Nick, I'll ask you, just Alan had kind of alluded to the fact that you had known these dancers before this collaboration. What's the story there? Who are they, and what's your relationship with these two artists?
So this is Billy Smith and Leslie Garrison, and they're two wonderful artists and dancers. Their primary professional job is dancing with the Mark Morris Dance Company, which is this incredible modern dance company based in Brooklyn. And we got to know them. We all as individuals had played with the Mark Morris Dance Company over the past few years. If you're not familiar, one of the many amazing things about the company is that Mark always uses live music in his performances, which is quite a commitment because they tour all over the world and do all of these amazing shows. But he really believes in the power of live music and live dance together. And so we met Leslie and Billy through that and through their work with the company. And we also got to know them as people, wonderful human beings, and as choreographers. They're both choreographers. And so when the opportunity came to create this program, we thought it could really use a visual dynamic dance element. And we asked them to create the dance portion. And so Caitlyn mentioned making those recordings. One of the things I remember making while we were making the recording, we were so concerned with like, okay, we have to really stick to the same tempi, you know, because dancers are they can be so precise about their tempos, and like, we don't want to have to change anything once we get there. And then I remember getting to the first rehearsal with the dancers in New York at the Baryshnikov Arts Center, and I remember how just incredibly flexible they were, and how they were able to adapt this wonderful choreography to. I remember asking like, "Oh, it's okay. We're actually going to take a little more time in the recording, but we don't have to if you're." And they're like, "Oh, that's fine. Yeah, we heard that. We already adjusted," because they're so musical already in the way that they listen. So we're so grateful to Leslie and Billy for their creation of the dance portion of this work.
So meta chamber music, it sounds like, between all six of you. There's a particular joy in being able to find a project where you can work with someone again. And I love that you had this interaction and then found a way to continue working with these people. That's great. Caitlyn, you said something earlier about your time at Avaloch and how you were. We've already heard how you reading through new pieces and then making recordings for dancers and doing many different activities. And I wanted to ask your quartet specifically. In the 12-year history, I know that you've done major competitions. Aeolus Quartet has held some of the most prestigious residencies at UT Austin, at Maryland, at Juilliard, and you've been through periods of time as a group where it's been all day, every day, 24 hours, like live, breathe, sleep together. And then also other periods, and perhaps now the current state we're in, where it's different schedule, a different format, and it makes me feel like you might have some particular insights as a quartet about how to capitalize on times when you do have a space like at Avaloch, or times when you do have a daily routine. And what have you explored and discovered over the years about using different shapes of schedule time? I'll start with you, Caitlyn, but yeah,
it's a great question, and obviously coming from a musician. So I can't say enough about what a gift Avaloch has been to everybody who's gone, but really our group has benefited so much from it. So much of what we do, as you know, Hannah, is we're on the road, we're touring, we're playing concerts, and we get there and you rehearse, and you fly in, you rehearse, you do the thing, you play the concert, you fly out, and a lot of it is really go, go, go. And that is one way of our existence. But the opposite of that is Avaloch, and that has given us the space and the time to not only, as I was saying earlier, come up with things that are very deeply meaningful to us in terms of collaborations and season planning, making programs that speak to us, and we feel like will feel hopefully mutually beneficial with us and the audience. And the space has become essential for us. I can't even say, this summer I was like aching for Avaloch, for having that time to just be creative and live in that headspace, rest well, eat so well, and literally not have to think about anything except for music making. And that is a gift beyond what is describable. And not only within, our own rehearsal studio, but also experiencing that with other artists who are also experiencing the same environment. The shares at night, it's just such a deeply inspirational setting. And we're so fortunate to have experienced it, because not only has it let us reach beyond the norms of what we can do in a typical season in terms of these collaborations with Lexi and Tim and with Leslie and Billy, but it's where we learn our season's rep. It's where we really, really take the time to work deeply and thoroughly and learn what we're going to be playing and presenting in the coming season. So it's been hugely, hugely important to us, personally, musically, artistically, food-wise. I don't know about you guys. I
Oh,
do
yeah.
about Avaloch
Nutritionally, that's where you load up for the
That's
year.
one, yeah.
We just eat all of our food at Avaloch, and
then just coast.
Yeah.
I mean, when I hear you speak about it, Caitlyn, I hear an urgency that sometimes groups that maybe are still in school, they don't really have. I wonder if, Nick, Rachel, or Alan, if you feel like, you're not Avaloch specifically, but your approach to spending certain quantities of time together has, changed versus 10 years ago, how you feel like, how focused do you feel about what you want to get out of that time? Has it changed?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. It absolutely has changed. And I think Caitlyn was talking so beautifully about, how the time at Avaloch feels so spacious, and it can almost be have like a meditative quality for the group, which is so special. And I think in our school years, we were able to kind of take that feeling for granted. In certain ways, you have so much time, you have so few, in music conservatory, we had so few kind of specific constraints relative to the rest of normal life. So we would just spend hours and hours kind of meandering our way through these masterworks, and that's a luxury that you don't often have in real life, and we don't often have in our kind of practical existence now, even before the pandemic. So it's something that we've learned to really appreciate when we have it, and when we don't have it, we are ultra organized about how we spend our time together to make sure that we're using every minute as productively and effectively as we can.
I have heard, Alan, that you're the schedule captain. Is that still true?
That is true.
I will kick it to Rachel or Nick. How effective of a schedule captain is he?
Great.
He doesn't mess around.
Hey, thanks, guys.
It does take this level of foresight and planning just to know okay, we need to have this huge giant pile of rep ready by these several concerts, and we only have X amount of rehearsal time to kind of meet that out. And I think the whole game has turned into an efficiency thing, really. It's how prepared can we be, how focused can we get in the time that we have together, so that we are bringing a performance that we're proud of for each of those concerts. Yeah,
that's great. Let's bring Tim into the conversation, who's been waiting so patiently all this time. So Tim Mauthe's piece is another one of the works we'll be listening to. And Tim, I'll just turn to you to ask, what's your piece about, and how did the collaboration go for this one?
What the piece is about is would be an incredibly long answer and a lot of winding around. The collaboration was incredible. Yeah, I've known these guys since school and am married to Caitlyn, so it's like it's like these are my favorite humans, and it's they're a group that you just trust them with humanity's masterworks and bringing them back to life or fresh. I mean, it's just amazing. And then to have them playing the notes that you scribble on the pages is another treasured moments. The collaboration was, um, Avaloch Farm was a collaborator for sure. I'm an early bird, so I would be up at 5:30, kind of mosey down to the cafeteria hall area to get the coffee and the cookies and the leftover like dinner rolls and things that were I would just pile up my composing breakfast and then head to the studio and then just one note at a time just to get in there. And um, it was funny. I was thinking about like how long were we actually there? 1 week, 2 weeks. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't keep track at all. It was it was just like this beautiful extended um, creative space to be in. And so the piece really just started like that, one note at a time. And you'll hear in the piece, it starts off with one note. This is eventually turned into a shape that turned into a larger shape, and then sort of had a context after that, which was the middle somewhere. So eventually the piece sort of started to gather, I don't know, aesthetic partnerships that were coming to the fore in my own like creative space. Things that I'd taken mental notes. I was like, yeah, I'd really like to work on this, or a piece that sort of has a companion here. And then there was this other really cool, unexpected thing. I was walking with our kids sometime during our time there, and saw this guy building a stone wall, and it's like, wow, I can really relate to that. He always just has these like big heavy chunks of earth, and he's just like moving them and very deliberately placing them in the perfect spot to where it's not going to fall over, and it's going to make this beautiful sort of timeless thing that people have done forever and ever. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, people have been putting notes together forever, building these kinds of things. And so I felt this like incredible sort of primitive, simplistic, creative process that just needed the time that was afforded by Avaloch. So then one of the biggest, I'd say, aesthetic companions to the piece was Joseph Alber's Interaction of Color, which is essentially like a color textbook, where he'll compare two colors and just to see the way that the two interact. The way they tend to vibrate differently depending on the shade and the timbre and the different even the different sizes and shapes make the colors change. And so the whole point is that it's completely deceptive. And I've always thought that was one of the more mysterious things to grab a hold of as a composer. Is you put these notes down and you give it to someone, and it is what it is when they play it, and that's one of the beautiful parts about it. And so I found a very close relation to the fact that color is deceptive. It's like also this notation can be incredibly deceptive. And so going back to the like immense trust that I have in the Aeolus Quartet, it was like, oh goody, I get to give them these stones that I put on the wall, and they get to make a cathedral out of it. And it was the experience was great because I'd notate everything out, and then they would take pictures on the iPads of the manuscript paper, share it to each other, and then read it down, and spend like sit on the chords, and we had time to just let them vibrate and sort of and tune the overtones to get some of the things that I was going for to make the colors work harmoniously, or see where there was some sort of deception at play. So the process was just very simple. It was like add a note, move one or two when moving between chords, and it's kind of different in a lot of basically every process that I've ever had with a piece, because I'd never been afforded that kind of time. So it was just about finding the right one, and that exploration, and the kind of slowing down of your heart rate that you get from that kind of space, and the dissolving of mental static that you're afforded by being at Avaloch and in that creative space.
I love hearing you speak about, that you were anticipating already that the performers putting the sounds into the air is like an essential piece of the composition. And having these specific people in mind is such a beautiful thought, that you were putting that stonework together, but anticipating that you would need the participation of the quartet as well in order to make it come to life. So this performance we're about to watch, when was it, and what were the circumstances?
It was the Avaloch share.
Okay.
And it was, oh man, it was at the end of a very long share, and it's slow music that's dissonant, and hats off to the audience for being there. Yeah, it was a really beautiful experience. I mean, the stillness of the evening and everyone's concentration and the vibe of the room was so welcoming to that experience. It can be terrifying to read unfinished poetry to people, but yeah, it felt great.
Well, that sounds like a beautiful vibe to enter into. So let's go there all together. Here's Tim Mauthe's piece. have to tell you that it makes me a little bit sad to see a sharing session when we haven't been able to do one of those this year. So thanks for sharing this, as you mentioned, Tim, a work in progress. There's always something that's really a generous thing to share with people. I know that Nick, you had a few more thoughts to add about Tim's piece and kind of what its current status is and plans that you have.
Well, yes, and I wanted to say we initially were planning on premiering it and performing it this season, and of course the pandemic put a wrench in those gears. But we very much look forward to doing that in hopefully the next season after this, once everything gets back to normal. And yeah, it was just such a wonderful experience to work with Tim. It was a really interesting and unique experience, I think. Because I remember like Tim would come in, as he mentioned, with these just little fragments of music that sounded so interesting. And it was a little bit like seeing like completely disparate parts of a ship, like all one at a time. And like and so you're seeing these very like intricate little mechanisms, and I'm like wondering, wow, that's so cool. I wonder how he's going to integrate that. And then I remember specifically the night of the share was actually a really magical performance experience for me, because it's always a kind of a mysterious, magical process by which like notes on paper become a performance when you're there. But especially with Tim's piece, it was just so wonderful to see how he had taken the ideas that he had been playing with and put them together. And I thought it was even though it was just a unfinished piece, it still felt like a very meaningful connection with the people who were there, and between us in the quartet and between us and Tim, who was listening in the audience. One of the more special performance experiences that we've had, especially with the new work. So I very much look forward to hearing the rest of it. And I think already what you've come up with is really beautiful and profound. So thanks, Tim.
So Tim, has it evolved since this performance, the piece?
Yeah, so the thing that we just heard is some part of the middle, and coming I remember one of the first stages of getting the music organized and just putting notes on the page was taking one set of consecutive chords and just coming up with as many different variations as possible. And so some of those have turned into just full-on sections, and so eventually it's all going to sort of blob together and be a whole piece. But yeah, so I think that's kind of the next step, is just to keep wandering and eventually meet up with the rest of it.
Well, we'll all have to stay tuned and look ahead to a future season when we can hear the premiere. Speaking of which, what's coming up for Aeolus? Caitlyn, what's coming down the pipeline?
Sure. So our pipeline has changed significantly in the last 6 months. The pandemic, of course, as for all performing musicians, has really made live performance virtually impossible. And so we have spent a lot of time apart. Actually, we discovered it's the longest time that we've ever spent apart since the quartet formed. And we are over the computers, we actually started a project called Bach for All, which is the release each Monday morning of a different Bach chorale that we record mostly remotely. Although recently we got to do it in person. We'll tell you about that in a second. But we have recorded them mostly remotely, and we release them each week with the hopes of finding beauty and peace each week and providing that to our listeners. And it's been really wonderful. Actually, we've come away with a lot of meaningful partnerships through it. We have shared the music with we're in residence with a retirement home in Ohio. We've shared it with hospitals during the pandemic. We were supposed to perform at Mount Sinai in New York City at the height of the pandemic. And of course, that was not possible. So we're trying as much as possible to find opportunities to gather safely, to create as much content in that time that we're together, and then be able to present it as part of these virtual series this season. So you can check out the links below to see when some of these concerts will air. They will all have watch parties and live releases, and you can jump on our website to get the most up-to-date information about when you can see and hear these things. But we're really just navigating these waters like everybody else is, just trying to find ways that we can have meaningful interactions with each other, with society at large, during this unprecedented time. And I think for us, one of the reasons we started Bach for All, and one of the reasons we're trying so hard to get together right now, is that it's not only to play concerts for these series, it's also because the beginning of the pandemic, it was so bizarre. We felt so helpless. You know, musicians, so much of what we do, we're here when there's loss, we play. When there's joy, we play. When there's sorrow, we play. And part of our experience is to bring music to those who might benefit from it in that moment. And at the start of the pandemic, we couldn't do that. And that felt insanely helpless. And so these gatherings and this Bach for All project are our attempt at bringing people together, at bringing beauty to the world during a time when it is sometimes difficult to find. And so we're just trying to take it day by day, kind of like Tim Stone by Stone, ways to create meaningful interactions with our communities and with the world.
I would encourage everyone to sign up for the Aeolus mailing list. I love getting an email with a new Bach video every week myself. So I hope that you'll all check out their website, and I know you can subscribe to that below. But let's watch this Ravel quartet. It's a perfect finale for this concert. thank you so much for sharing that. I love that piece. It's a perfect ending to tonight's musical selections. And I just wanted to ask one final question, and it has to do with your time at Avaloch. And I will say that my most vivid Aeolus Quartet memory at Avaloch, I actually didn't even see you, but there was one time where you came and there were like flight delays and a thunderstorm, and like it was like an episode of The Amazing Race. I was a resident director at the time, and I was just trying to keep track of your, making sure that you arrived safely. And I was getting all these messages like the flight is now going to land in like the middle of the night, and we're going to drive, and there's a baby, and it was like this most impressive journey to Avaloch. But you all made it. I think it was like at 3 a.m. or something.
Right.
And it all worked out, but that's sort of my strongest, I think, Aeolus at Avaloch, I think of that, which hopefully is maybe not your strongest memory, but did you have any other memories that stood out to you, that non-musical or musical?
Well, I have to give a quick shout out to Joe Wang from the Argus Quartet, because I believe you handed off keys to her and she woke up at like 2 a.m. to let us into our apartments or something. So thanks, Joe.
I have a great memory of being there as a family. So I, like Tim, I'm also a member. I guess Lexi, like Tim, is also married to a member of the quartet, me. And we were able to spend time there together, wonderful creative time. And at that time we had one child, our first son. We have 2 now. But I just have this wonderful memory of him running around on the lawn, the beautiful lawn, and hearing one of the vocal groups, amazing. I think they were mostly focused on early music, singing on the porch, and like kind of this glorious music filtering out. The sun was low in the sky. Our son was running around in this green grass, and it was just like, I'm not sure it could get much better than that in terms of like ideal situation. So it's, and also all of the food. Oh my goodness.
I was just thinking like favorite moments, and so many meals passed through my mind, and like so many incredible, like just our rehearsal studio, and like Nick was saying, hearing constant music surrounding you, and the amazing conversations around the table with like everything from early music groups to like a mime. It was amazing. And then like having our quartet meetings out on the porch with like a cow in the background. It doesn't get much more idyllic.
I was just thinking about the evening shares and how magical they are. It's really a one-of-a-kind experience. Out in the darkness, with the starlight and the kind of open air coming in from the porch, and every performance there is always just so remarkable and so much fun. But I particularly remember this amazing medieval band we got to know very well while we were there, called Alchemy, and they performed this share in our last residency at Avaloch that I remember I was just sitting there like grinning from ear to ear the whole time they were playing. It was just like the most fun, and I was like, I mean, we get to have fun, but like that's a party.
And honestly, we all missed Avaloch, being at Avaloch so much this season, that I think it just reinforced for me personally that this is something we look forward to literally all year. It's the first time that we've really had like a special place where it's like the only thing we need to do when we're there is make music with each other and just kind of like really fully dedicate to this. And not having that this year we totally missed it. So it's it's created a very special place and ideal for us as a quartet, and can't wait to come back.
Well, we hope that we'll be welcoming you, all 6 of you, back very soon and often and again and again. So thank you so much for having this virtual time with us now and for sharing all of your performances. And we look forward to keeping track of all the great things that you'll get up to in the coming year. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Hannah.
Hannah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.